So, one of the first states to legalize is experiencing a decline in sales for the third year in a row. Is the legal market crashing? Are people consuming less? Or are more folks just growing their own?
There is a new study. It says that use is at historically high levels nationwide, but here in Denver, sales actually continue to drop.
9 News reporter Evan Krugel uncovers those stats and what it can mean big picture. What's happening with this?
Yeah, big deal here. The industry, obviously only a decade old, but sales have now dropped for 3 straight years here in Denver, marking the first time that's happened since legalization. And as those numbers continue to fall, businesses are worried not just about their bottom line, but about the community impact as well. To survive in the industry, you have to keep more than just your customers a mile high.
I love that. Please have our sales be high.
Ashley Chubin and Jars Cannabis have been around since legalization, a time when their jars and registers were overflowing with green.
And it would just be packed. We would have lines out the door. People were so excited to come through. So we're just not seeing it anymore. People are spending, not as much, and they're not coming as much.
New numbers show sales in Denver dropped 14% last year after a 22% drop the year before. Ashley blames the economy and the increase in competition nationwide, with weed now legal in 24 states.
Being able to have customers that are coming in from other states, we're really only seeing it now at 16th Street.
Ashley says a small decrease coming out of the pandemic was expected, but how far those sales will drop remains a mystery.
I think it always has to be a little bit of concern. As the industry is shifting, we really have to be prepared of what is next.
And while it's an impact on business, it also means less tax revenue for the state to put towards things like education.
And I think that's the biggest thing. When we have these decrease in sales, we can't be in the forefront of helping this community. And that's a huge thing that our money has been able to do good for.
And it's not just Denver dealing with this. Statewide numbers were down about 14% last year as well, falling to the lowest point we've seen since 2017.
So from that clip, you guys can see that it's pretty interesting. One of the first states to legalize almost over a decade ago now, they're actually experiencing the third year in a row where sales have declined. And that's not because people are consuming less. It actually turns out the people nationwide are consuming more. But it seems that people are just purchasing less from a lot of these legal dispos. Now, there may be a lot of reasons for that. Overtaxation, overregulation, product is just not good. That Colorado crumble, you get some really dry, not good flower. Now, if we were to think logically, herbal tourism is a big thing. A lot of people back in the day would come to Colorado, particularly Denver, because it was fully legal. But now as more states are legalizing, there's less of a pull for people to go to spend $420, for example, over in Denver, when their local states are also fully legal.
It's interesting to think that usage is either static or climbing, and yet they're seeing the sales drop. Is that specific to how people are finding their?
Yeah, they view it simply as those 24 other states now where it's legal. Instead of people flying in and going to the 16th Street Mall like they used to, they're staying home and buying there. That's the big difference. One thing to note here, too, pretty big impact on Denver's economy from this, about an $8 million drop in revenue. Of course, the city uses that money for things like education and infrastructure. So that's something to watch here in the years to come as well.
All right, we'll see if they get some marketing plans or get something going, right, to get the revenue increased.
Thanks, Evan.
So as sales decline in one of the states that is considered a mecca in the industry, things weren't always like this. Because if we were to go back to when they first legalized, sales were actually booming. Check it out.
Be able to walk into a store and buy legally. In Colorado, they've been selling legally for more than a month now, giving us our first glimpse of what Washington might face when stores open this spring. In part one of our week-long special report, KXLY4's Ian Cole traveled to Denver to watch legal in action. He's now live in the studio with what he found. Ian?
And Nadine, when retail shops opened in January, there were lines around the corner. 1 month later now, sales have slowed down just barely. And people who chose to get into the business are calling it the best decision of their lives. The sound inside the Lodo Wellness Center in downtown Denver is not one of giggles, but rather a ring. Music to the ears of a business owner.
I'm sorry, that sound is every time my door opens.
No, it's fine. That's a good sound then.
It is a good sound, actually.
Linda Andrews split her medical pot business into half recreational, half medical. Washington stores will have to be one or the other, but all of the stores in Colorado were set up this way. 1 month in, sales are sky high.
On the first day, we did what we generally do in a month for medical.
Every night, about an hour before close, the lines grow. Buyers and users from all walks of life. Many strains of weed are available, from sour diesel to Durban poison. But the infused drinks, cookies, and brownies go so fast, none are left. Most customers steered clear of our cameras, but Jesse didn't mind documenting his first legal purchase.
It's the first time I've ever been able to impulsively purchase marijuana.
Kyle O'Malley was at the Lodo Wellness Center for fun. He usually just buy from someone he knows, and because of taxes here, he'll pay an extra 36%.
If you want to get rid of a black market, you can't overtax the product, and I think that's what they're doing.
But after his purchase, O'Malley says it's worth peace of mind to buy from a store.
You don't have to feel like a criminal. You come in, it doesn't feel like you're doing anything wrong.
Even though the sales are great, some stores are having to ration the amount of marijuana they can sell, some to 3 grams, so they don't run out of business. That's 1/8 the legal limit, just to keep the product on the shelves. Andrews thinks Washington shops may face the same problem.
So sales were booming so much that they had to ration the product to about a 3.5 so that they can actually keep some of the product on the shelves. That's how good things were. But things have changed completely, as now sales are down over 22%, the largest drop since legalization.
This is our #1 SKU in the entire store.
Even best sellers
So it's just a pre-roll that we sell here.
can't make up the difference.
It's a losing battle right now.
Lance Perryman says sales at his Denver dispensaries are down about 30%, much worse than his 5 other Colorado stores.
In my opinion, it's the worst city to operate a cannabis business in right now.
He blames a decline in foot traffic and tourism, plus an increase in minimum wage and regulation.
If you're profitable in Denver as a dispensary, then props to you. It doesn't happen very often. It's more challenging now than it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. It's getting more and more difficult.
Denver says sales revenue dropped 22%, $110 million last year. It's partially a statewide trend, says the director of Colorado marijuana industry group.
So as he said, and I quote, Denver is now one of the worst places to operate a cannabis business, period. And that's just mind-blowing to me, but I gotta say, it's down to a lot of the policies that some of these places are implementing when it comes to the markets and the industry. There's too much overtaxation, too much overregulation. It's just a really perfect recipe for disaster. Now, in my humble view, legalization is something that needs to be rolled out in the right way. There's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to this, and as you guys can see, over in Colorado, which is a really blue liberal state, they're facing a lot of issues when it comes to the legalization. Meanwhile, in other red conservative states, you're seeing similar issues when it comes to legalization.
It's a perfect storm of sadness for the marijuana industry.
He says cost-conscious consumers are buying less and less expensive product.
Some of the other communities here in Colorado don't have quite as much competition as we have in Denver. They're able to withstand a downturn a little better.
The competition for Perryman's store is next door, which forces him to keep prices here lower than he'd like.
Prices have dropped down and costs have gone up. It does not equal success in business.
And right there, guys, is another point. Over in Colorado, there's oversaturation of the market. I kid you not, guys. In Denver, there's literally a dispo on every corner. Heck, on one block, you might find literally 3 or 4 dispos. So as a consumer, that's great. You got a lot of options. You can shop and find the lowest prices and get the best value for your dollar. But as a business owner, you really find yourself in difficulties trying to compete and stay competitive.
Does not equal success in business.
He says his company has moved some operations out of the city and may have to close here entirely if the situation gets worse.
I don't know how you survive. I really don't.
Perryman wants less government regulation of the industry, but there's no indication that's coming anytime soon. He says foot traffic is actually steady or up at his other locations, just not in Denver. Kyle.
You also have to wonder, though, Cole, if oversaturation isn't part of the problem. I mean, the old joke that Denver has, more weed stores than Starbucks. There's one on every corner, and sometimes they're next to each other. Like, there might be something to that, too.
Exactly, and that's the case here, is he's literally right next door to another dispensary, which is driving his prices down, which is impacting his bottom line as well. That is definitely a huge part of this story, too.
Cole Sullivan, thank you.
So there are tons of factors right here at play, and we haven't even gotten into people who have their own gardens or who grow their own. Now we're going to hop over to California in a bit, but just a quick reminder guys, if you're getting value from this video, please do like, share and subscribe to the channel, and if you want to support us further, join the ICANN VIP Bean Club or cop some merch from our merch store. Now earlier in the show, you would have heard one of these dispo owners down in Colorado talking about the economy and citing that as a reason why people are buying less. And that sort of coincides with what we're seeing here according to this article, where I quote, 2 out of 3 herb consumers are actually buying less herb due to inflation. Now this article was published in March, and I find it pretty interesting that there were no similar articles published over the period of the last 4 years. Now that being said, there's another article which says consumers say that they'll increase their herbal use to deal with the Trump administration. Now I found this pretty funny, and I quote, after a tumultuous first 3 months of President Donald Trump's second term with heightened economic anxieties and major restructuring of the federal government, the polling results indicate that many plan to turn to herb for some reprieve. Now personally, I think a lot of people can find reprieve and comfort through the good herb regardless of who's in government. So to me, I think that this article is pretty goofy. But there's another article which I did find pretty interesting, and this is a science and health article, and I quote, legalizing herb led to an increase in use but a decrease in problematic misuse. And this is according to the American Medical Association study. So I really found this pretty interesting, that people are using more but abusing less. Now, like I said, let's hop over to California, because that's also one of the states that you think of when you think of early legalization, and they're also experiencing decline in sales. Have a look.
California introduced recreational. The industry was expected to take off, but instead it hit a number of roadblocks, and business for some went up in smoke. Aditi Roy explains.
For the past 5 years, Northern California-based Bloom Farms has manufactured and distributed vape pens filled with concentrate. Why vape pens?
Simple, convenient, easy, very manageable.
Founder Michael Ray says in the early years, they sold to dispensaries carrying medical marijuana, which had been legal in California since 1996. But when the state legalized recreational in 2018, Ray had high hopes about growing his business.
It was an exciting time that we thought was going to be very, very busy.
But it wasn't. In fact, sales went down last year. Ray's not the only entrepreneur who's struggling. For the first 6 months of 2018, the state brought in an estimated $84 million in tax revenue, less than half of what had been estimated. Ray blames cumbersome regulations, including the requirement that licensed distributors like Bloom Farms only sell to licensed dispensaries.
So in 2017, there was right around 2,000 retail and delivery locations that were available to sell in California.
Once recreational was legalized, all of those pre-existing retailers and any new ones had to get approval from state and local regulators in order to legally sell in the state. It's been a slow-moving process, and the state currently only has 1,100 licensed retailers, down from the year before, and also way below the 6,000 the state had originally projected. On top of the shrinking retail base, costly and time-consuming packaging and labeling requirements.
The requirement for child resistance. Inside of our packaging, we have a very special child-resistant pouch. You cannot open this up without scissors, essentially.
And with added taxes, Ray says his products are at least 30% more expensive this year than they were last, sending customers to the black market. One market research firm says California's black market grew after legalization, from $10 billion in 2017 to more than $11.5 billion in 2018.
With all that said, let me know what you guys think about this topic. Do you guys think that people are actually consuming less or actually just buying less? Do you think that people are just growing more at home? Or do you guys think that overtaxation, overregulation, oversaturation are just causing the market to crumble? Drop it in the comments and let me know. Now, as you guys can see from today's episode, some of these legal models absolutely suck. But there's one legal model I think is even worse, and that's having to get your herb from the liquor store. If you want to find out more about that, check that video out because it's coming up right now.